Bill, just one small correction though, the only one standing between Andrea and me. Thank you for those inspiring talks. I'm just going to open up the floor for questions, a couple of questions before we get to the drinks. Is there anybody that would like to ask Celia or Richard or Bill a question?
The lure of the bar is too strong.
What was that?
That's what the drink in his
Oh, good.
Hero.
No, just actually one observation. On the last slide, you have two pictures of kids working with computers. There is not a single sheet of paper or pencil. Oh, that's the shot. I mean, actually, in that particular class, they do everything. I mean, it's how they mix the computer activities with paper and pencil is up to the teacher. But they'll have the children sitting on the mat with the pictures, or they have them. So I think that's a chance. It's very important to mix on the computer, as I tried to say.
But well spotted. We were
Well
hoping
spotted.
Can you say a little bit more about what the curriculum actually will be? I mean, the only thing I really know that it involves Scratch.
Actually,
And to what extent it's kind of, I mean, builds or it's different from a lot of the local math activities we know from the 80s and 90s.
You want to start?
no, you start.
It's terribly sketchy, very high level of abstraction. But it says things like, at age 7, children should be introduced to the idea of an algorithm. That's all it says.
You mean the computer curriculum? You can look it up on the web. It's
Yeah,
all
I have
there.
looked up, but I mean, what you took in the Scratch math.
What we're
curriculum.
doing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we've actually devised for a whole 5 modules for the 9-10-year-olds, and another 5 are nearly done. And what we've tried to do is link what is in our national curriculum and the computer curriculum and meld them together. And we try to go to the big computational ideas. And some of them are really quite difficult in that in Scratch you've got things like events and parallel processing and things that I don't think there's a big literature on how you teach that. So basically our approach is to say what are big computational ideas in this new medium. And some of them are the old ones in terms of the if-then and the forever. And one of our main challenges is because Scratch is everywhere, I'm going to sound terribly judgmental, people just plonk things on. I mean, you can make programs very easy. Those of you know, you just build your blocks, put them all together, you make a wonderful effect. God knows what they're doing. So we try and do it very systematically, going through some of the big ideas and the control structures and introducing variables and expressions. And next year, in the second year, we will do much more modeling of some mathematical things. We are in a very peculiar position. If it'd been anything other than doing a randomized control trial, we'd have shared our activities, but we aren't allowed to. I mean, it's a really strange position to be in, but we are contracted not to share. Because if the medicine is spread to everybody, then it's not going to have an effect. So I can tell you the rough idea, and we are working very hard and trying it. Do you understand, others, what I mean? Is if the schools mustn't share. I mean, the metaphor
I should
is...
just say one thing in our defense. Which is
everything will be free.
everything will be free in here. And the kids who are not getting she actually said the word medicine.
Well, we have to.
So the kids who are not participating in
Get it later.
they get it.
They're getting it. It's ethically.
It's a delayed treatment. That's a
Yeah.
typical-
Just a delayed treatment.
And we're not doing that research anyway, it's an independent university.
We'll do the delayed treatment with as much conviction as the treatment. But we can't share the details of the activity, which is a peculiar, it's so anti sort of logo and the Scratch thing, but we mustn't, because we're contracting not to. But also, admittedly, as Bill says, I'm a bit of an optimist. You never know, it might work, and then you could all vote it and say we've all got to do programming and maths, and that will be in order to explicitly to think about algorithms and reasoning. And there's a chance.
So, well, I mean,
So ask us that
other
when
people
it's
ask
all
other
over.
questions.
Lisa, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. I was just curious, I might have missed this, but the 100 schools that you're doing, or that you're using in the study, I was wondering about the socioeconomic economics of the schools. Like, I know the primary school you highlighted there, like they have to get, there's admissions for that school, right? So I'm just curious about what.
Well, they're very mixed.
It's all over.
This is one of our design criteria for the approach of the sample. I mean, I should have said it's funded by something called the Education Endowment Fund, which is eventually comes from government. I suppose everything comes from government's arm's length. And one of the criteria is to narrow the gap. Everything in our country is to narrow the gap in achievement, because whatever they do, we still have this huge gap, mainly because you have fee paying, i.e. exclusive schools. That's the main reason for the gap. But we are supposed to, so any sample is completely mixed in terms of school and school intake. And so what they will do in the randomized, to those who know statistics, you literally match the schools on the basis of, in the treatment and the control, there will be matched schools in terms of intake, and also prior maths. Now everybody knows in teaching there's a huge variation, because it depends on the teachers and the stability. We know this. But we work very closely with the teachers, but they will be matched on social and economic intake, language diversity, and prior maths attainment.
But, I mean, what we haven't done is gone out of our way to recruit from low SES areas, for example. The sample is big enough that we're confident that there will be enough comparison across socioeconomic status for there to be a genuine randomized element. But it's actually, it is a very interesting thing. The only thing we did was make sure we have a geographical spread. So we have about a fifth of the sample is from London, for example.
It's very interesting in London, we have, as Richard said, we have a fifth in London, which is where we're from. And London has the most diverse intake. We're very, very poor areas and very, very rich areas. Some of the schools are good and some not. Very mixed in terms of race and whatever.
What would the materials be? Like, I'm just curious. So you're not differentiating the materials that you're giving to all the schools. So some students will be different in the way they learn, but every school is getting the same.
No.
In your 50 schools, every school is getting
Yeah,
it.
they all get
Yeah,
all
schools,
all
yeah.
our schools will get the
So
same.
there's no, you can't change the way it's
No,
taught.
but our activities have, for example, follow-up activities. If the teacher wants to identify kids as the pace of the class is going too slowly, they can do the faster.
Actually,
And
you can see
we're beginning to look at the algorithms.
you see in the slide I was putting up that Bill was
Actually, did
showing.
you notice that Bill's the only person I've ever met who gave 2 presentations?
I stopped her. You didn't realise, Bill. That was the slide I didn't get up to. And you were showing. But that was one of the things we noticed in looking at the context of the study. It says because it's a statutory computer curriculum, you've got big business moving in fast, and we have, learn how to deliver the computer curriculum in 2 short lessons. And it's really interesting in how poor a lot of this is, actually, in terms of differentiation and progression. And so, I mean, in some ways, we must be able to do better with some of it. Some of it's good, but differentiation is a real challenge. So we try to make sure it's up to the teacher, but we will give them options in terms of, what you might have extensions and what you might do. And the most important thing for the people who are less, not so quick, is to do lots of acting out. Don't get away from the computer, as you say. You don't have to be typing all the time. And, we'll have lots of videos of that going on.
I have a question about the test, the national test.
Yeah.
So,
Which the maths ones or the
sorry?
maths?
The math, yeah. From examining what our students have learned at Brock from their 3 courses, math and coding, we've asked some students to reflect on different things about their experience. And one student indicated that comparing these courses with the other math courses is what the difference is that it's the retention of knowledge. Like it sticks to your brain. And so I'm wondering, like, in that test that the students will all take the national math test, I mean, I'm not sure that this could be reflected, right, for those who will have done your medicine treatment or the other one.
Actually, that's our nightmare scenario. We actually are the test is the test. We can't influence it. And many of the questions on the national test are frankly just calculations. And we don't see any reason at all why doing all this scratch-based work should improve calculation, except that there are interesting aspects to calculation, and we will be devising some activities based on calculation. So what we have is an assurance that we'll be able to match performance across single items. Otherwise, the fact that somebody gets 37% right on some test that encompasses the whole of arithmetic and mathematics isn't going to mean anything. But you heard that Celia's the optimist, not me.
Well, the thing is, the funders would love us to say that, that it gives you an advantage across the whole test. So they're only interested in the whole test. And as Richard said, the chance of this happening is pretty slim. But, we've actually got a lot of schools, so the chance of getting better. In fact, schools really want to join us, which is quite nice, actually. But if we can do the item analysis, it will be really interesting, I think, as researchers to see which items they might have affected, which would be, as Richard said, much more interesting than the whole test. But the funders just want the whole test and say, this is really important to do. So whether to answer your question, whether we can, if you're in our year 6, which is going to be much more explicit mathematical modelling, which is why I was so interested in long division and your algorithms, because long division, our minister loves long division, it's the most important thing in maths. And so I don't think we can do it in Scratch. If anybody would like to help us, if we could model the long division algorithm in Scratch and give some motivation for the kids to do this beastly thing, which they have to do, and they get points off if they don't put the 1 in the right set.
I think we should discuss this between ourselves.
Well, why not? It can't be worse. Anyway, sorry. Might just keep them in keep it in their head. Yeah.
I'm wondering how you're training with the teachers and whether or not that training differs between the treatment and the control condition. And will the teachers know, if they're in the treatment or in the control condition?
Well, they certainly know. Yeah, they all had to apply to be part of the trial.
Right.
It's been incredibly complicated and hard because they apply to be part of the trial, and it's made very clear to them that they want to be in the trial, but the trial they might get put in a treatment or control, and it's not up to us, it's up to the other university. And then we have to write to them and say, we call them wave 1 and wave 2. So we say, we are delighted you're part of the wave 1 and we will be working with you, and we are also delighted you're in wave 2, and we will keep in touch with you, which we will, and we send them newsletters, but you'll do your professional development in a year's time.
So you're worried about any sort of desirability bias, kind of, because you have all these teachers wanting to be involved and then get put in the control condition?
It's a real problem.
Yeah.
And one of the major problems is if you're in the control, you lose heart and you just don't want to do it at all.
How are you going to keep it secret? You can post projects in Scratch.
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
we don't do that.
No, but the kids could.
They could.
Yes, they could.
They could. We can't stop that.
Okay, sorry.
No,
No,
of
I mean,
course-
there's
of course
nothing we
they
can
could.
do.
Yeah, no,
And also
teachers
it
will
feels-
share.
Huh?
Teachers,
teachers
they
can
will
share their
sell
school.
the
In
information.
principle, we could have 2 schools 50 yards from each other, where one is in the treatment group and one is in the control group.
Do the teachers have to sign a confidentiality agreement?
No.
Well,
But they don't have to sign a confidentiality agreement, but they have to agree to what we call memorandum of understanding. So we strongly ask them not to share.
the point is,
But
we
if
can't-
they do share, then we can't do
we
anything.
can't police it. It's part of the project. They're getting all this stuff free and all our wonderful support free. And one of the things we ask them to do is not to share outside their schools. Now,
Sorry.
in some ways, it's just, if they do, they do. But then obviously, if everyone's doing the same thing, we've got no chance of success in this particular.
I want to just make one point that I think might be interesting in terms of research funding, maybe in calendar 2. The institution that gave us the money is very wealthy. They make £1 million a month interest.
Which institution was it?
It's the Education Endowment Fund.
It's only England, I'm afraid. You don't have much money compared to England.
They're part of the Commonwealth. It's a big family.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true as well. And they've been working for 5 years funding projects. They've never funded a project to do with technology before, ever. You might say that's quite surprising. But they were very loose. They said we'll fund anything that comes our way that we think adheres to our mission. But one of the things that they were absolutely clear about is that they would not fund design and development. The only thing they wanted to fund was something that's been tried and tested, and you really give a dosage of it to control groups and treatment groups and so on. And we said they wanted to give us money because they wanted to have a project about technology. And we said, well, our condition for taking your money is not that we don't have to do a randomized control trial, but it's that we can spend the whole of the first year doing design and working on design experiments with the teachers. And to our amazement, they agreed to that. So you might want to take an optimistic view that people are beginning to realize that technology isn't a thing. You give scratch to people and see what happens. Give people a dose of this software and see what happens. We're quite cheered up that they decided to change the habit of not a lifetime, but 5 years.
But also we're doing all the stuff, all the sorts of research that you do, we're doing that all the time. So we will have a lot of formative evaluation and case studies of the schools. That's what we do and enjoy doing. And so even if we get non-significant results, we have to solve a little bit, we have to say, well, it all depended on the teacher.
Oh, you can massage the data.
Sorry?
You can massage the data,
No, we
especially if you have
We
so
wouldn't-
many.
We wouldn't think of such a
We
thing.
can't, it's nothing to do with the data, it's nothing to do with it. The data is done by another university.
I think it's an interesting point about the design and development piece, because in Canada, for example, we look at funding through one of our tri-council agencies or sort of our leading agencies that fund this kind of work. The design and the development piece is very difficult to get funded. You know, the fidelity piece is quite different, but that aspect of a project is very difficult to get funded in Canada as well. So it could also have interesting implications for funding these kind of projects in the future.
Yes. And one thing we will get, because we have quite a decent sized team, we'll get a huge amount of data and analysis of what the activities were like, how people responded to activities, the kind of ideas they developed and so on.
Was there any requirement for open access of the data, or they afterwards,
Afterwards, yes.
including the data?
Yes,
That's
we're happy with that.
Yeah, it's automatic. That's after.
Great.
Invite us back and share.
Yeah.
Well, it'll definitely give us a case study for applying for our own grants if we can point to an application in the UK that's funded design and development in England.
But I tell you, to be absolutely, for our contractors, we design, but we mustn't, what we actually give them has to be designed. We can't carry on changing, which is fair enough. So we can't say, I suddenly have some wonderful ideas from coming here. I can't go back and change. We've started now. We can't go back and change it. So once you start, it's got to be the treatment. And then
More modular, what we call tweaking.
these sorts of, oh, you've got a question?
Yes, yeah, I'm very intrigued by the idea in the design that there's unplugging and unplugged activities for each investigation.
Yes.
I'm very curious about your reasons why that's important, that unplugging. And I would like to hear a general sense of what some of these activities might include.
Well, what do people think about? I mean, I think what we learned a long time ago is that you can't do everything on the computer. You have to think about, it's the transfer question. You don't believe in transfer and such stuff, so you have to make sure that whatever is done in the computer, you think about what you learned, and then you model it. You have paper and pencil activities, or because they're little kids, we do a lot of I don't know, playing out on the computer, working through the algorithm, getting the kids to say things, you know. It's everything away, it means away from the computer. So you you've got something else to it. So you reflect on your programming together, teach it, lots of different examples. And it's crucially important actually to do that.
So just to answer your question about unplugging specifically, computer programming is an abstract art, like mathematics is, in a different way to mathematics, but it's abstract. So if you say to a young kid, repeat until such and such, there's a lot going on there. How do you test whether you've reached the end? What happens if you put a block in the wrong place? So the best way to deal with that is to act it out, to have kids each kid is a different block, they stand in a line. If you see a branch really looks like a branch because it comes to a fork in the road. And we think that's very important with such young kids.
We actually saw a little bit of it yesterday with Lisa when she was introducing her session, and she was modeling the loops and the sort of kinesthetic things she was doing with her class in a sort of unplugged way to model the algorithm.
Exactly. That's exactly. It's very important to do these different things to do. And the trouble is with Scratch, and I guess some of these other, because everything fits together, we almost had to undo lots of things that they've done in coding class, I think very outrageously. When you take out the forever, you bung a few blocks in there and something's going to whirl around forever in a very happy way, producing lots of very exciting stuff about which nothing is learned. So acting it out and stopping it. Well, I'm being a bit...
Nothing much.
Well, if you've got the forever loop, it's pretty powerful actually.
It's an interesting
It
design
looks
issue.
like you and Richard have the forever loop.
That's sweet.
Here, let me give you your ticket while you take another question. Are there any other questions? Can I give Richard two?
Definitely.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, we're good. Oh,
You're
can I?
welcome. Last question before we head out to the reception.
Oh,
Is there
no.
any last questions? So,
I think everybody's yawning.
Amy.
Next
Oh.
year, when you've done your treatment, will you come back and tell the story?
Yeah.
We will have
Oh, well,
another
that's
symposium.
of course, yeah.
Bigger.
You probably
Well,
need
actually,
somebody else at
we
some
were
point.
sharing with Bill, I really don't want to keep sort of looking historically, but in the early days of the Logo big MIT conferences, and Bill was running one, and we literally, a group of us did sit on the grass outside the Kresge and said what we need is a Logo maths movement. And we were trying to remember who was on, we didn't have a photograph of those people sitting on the grass. But I do think there's a group of us across the world who are really thinking about this. And it's a new question because there's so many, there's the connectivity, there's a new technology, but we've learnt a lot from the mistakes. Because 10 years after those heady days at MIT, programming was a dirty word. Programming didn't work. Stupid stuff was said, and it didn't work in some circumstances. So we had to spend a lot of time. Well, yes, it can work with suitably designed materials and with the right goals, etc. So I think
I must just say, we once had a proposal into a funding agency, and we sent this proposal around to various of our colleagues, and it contained the word programming, and they said, you cannot possibly have programming in the title, but dream up something that sounds impressive, and we came up with runnable, executable representation, and we got the money. And on that note,
So just thank you again
Thank you.
to all of you, to our speakers. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We meet back in here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.
he's so cynical.
And we will continue these rich discussions again in our working groups and as a whole group tomorrow morning at 9. We're just getting the reception set up.
Thank you very
Again,
much.
you can come get your tickets from me to get ready for the bar opening. Thank you, everyone.